My 4-year-old son was diagnosed with a brain tumor. His chances of living another 12 months are around 3%. 6 weeks ago, everything was normal. He was just like any other energetic, happy kid, running around the house, playing with his toys, and filling our days with his laughter. There were no warning signs, no subtle hints. Then, out of nowhere, half of his face stopped moving. It was like a switch had been flipped. One side of his beautiful, expressive face just froze. At first, we tried not to panic. We went to 2 doctors, both of them saying it was Bell's palsy, a temporary condition that would improve on its own. They assured us it was nothing to worry about, that with time he'd be back to his usual self. But days passed, and instead of getting better, things got worse. He started stumbling, his balance suddenly unreliable, and his words began to slur. I remember the day we rushed him to the emergency room like it was yesterday. The fear that gripped my chest, the endless waiting in sterile hallways, the desperation to hear some kind of good news. They did a CT scan and told us they found an anomaly in his brain. The word anomaly echoed in my head, cold and clinical, as they arranged for him to be transferred to another hospital. The second hospital felt even more overwhelming. Machines beeped constantly, doctors and nurses bustled around us, and I clung to every word they said, hoping for reassurance. Then came the MRI. I could see it in their faces before they even spoke. Something was terribly wrong. The words "inoperable tumor" felt like a punch to the gut. My knees almost gave out when they explained it was in his brainstem, the most delicate, vital part of his brain. Last week, they performed a biopsy to confirm what they already suspected. It came back malignant and diffuse, words that still make my stomach churn. The doctors didn't sugarcoat it. They called it the worst type of tumor a child can have. Hearing those words was like having the ground ripped out from under me. Now we are home, trying to hold on to whatever normalcy we can for a few days before starting radiotherapy next week. The doctors were clear. This treatment is not a cure. It will only help him live a few months longer, maybe ease his symptoms a little. That is all they can offer. I look at him now and see how much he has changed in such a short time. His once bright eyes seem tired, his movements slower, his speech more labored. But he still tries to smile, still tries to play when he has the energy. He does not fully understand what is happening, and honestly, I am glad he doesn't. I do not know how to process this. How do you prepare to lose the person you love most in the world? How do you cope with watching them fade away, piece by piece, knowing there is nothing you can do to stop it? I feel so helpless. Every day feels like a nightmare I cannot wake up from. I love him so much, and it breaks me to see him like this, to know that soon he will not be here anymore. I cannot imagine life without him. I would give anything, absolutely anything, for someone to find a cure, to give us more time, to give him a future. And if anyone out there has been through something like this, please tell me how to survive it. I feel like I am drowning. Comments. Liddy106. I am so sorry. In 1999, my son was DX with all leukemia. I remember vividly that my life split into before-after the diagnosis. I found it impossible to be present and engaged for anything else for a while. Life kinda gets put on hold, and that's okay. Spend time together. It's so damn hard to absorb joy when you're at this low, but you can, and you will. Some of my best memories are of hospital trips and stays. You're very isolated, but you can find pieces of joy that become memories. Hugs. Update 1. The past week has been an emotional roller coaster, to say the least. After writing my initial post, we returned to the hospital to begin radiotherapy. The doctors were kind, patient, and incredibly thorough in explaining every step of the process. They reassured me that they were doing everything they could to make it as easy as possible on my little boy. But even with all their efforts, nothing could prepare me for the heartbreak of seeing my child hooked up to machines, lying still as the treatment began. The first session left him utterly drained. By the time we got home, he could barely keep his eyes open. He refused dinner, which is so unlike him. He's always been a picky eater, but at least he'd nibble at something. That night, as I tucked him into bed, he looked up at me with those big, innocent eyes and asked, "When will I get better, Mommy?" That question felt like a knife to my heart. How do you explain something like this to a 6-year-old? I held him close, kissed his forehead and whispered, "We're doing everything we can to help you feel better." It's the only answer I can give, even though it feels so inadequate. This week has also brought a flood of messages from strangers online. Some shared their own stories of loss or survival, and others suggested alternative treatments. While I deeply appreciate the care and concern, our doctors have been very clear. This is the only option to give us a little more time. I've spent hours researching every suggestion, desperate for any thread of hope, but nothing seems viable. I keep asking myself, am I doing the right thing? Is there something more I should be fighting for? But all I can do is trust the experts and pray we're making the best choices for him. Despite the heavy weight of everything happening, I've been trying to create moments of joy where I can. We've started doing small things around the house that make him happy, building pillow forts, watching his favorite cartoons, and baking cookies together, even though he only eats the chocolate chips. His laughter, when it comes, is like sunlight breaking through a storm. It reminds me that he's still here, still my little boy, even as his body grows weaker. The radiotherapy will continue next week, and I know it's going to get harder. The doctors warned me about the side effects: fatigue, nausea, possibly even hair loss. Every day feels like a new challenge to face. I catch myself staring at him sometimes, memorizing every detail. The curve of his smile, the way his little hands grip his toys, the sound of his giggle. I'm terrified of forgetting even a single moment. One unexpected blessing has been the support of our community. A neighbor, who I barely know, dropped off a homemade dinner yesterday. Another family from my son's school left a card and a stuffed animal on our porch. These small gestures mean the world to us, even if I don't always have the energy to thank everyone properly. I'm also starting to realize how isolating this experience is. Friends don't know what to say, and I don't blame them. How do you respond to someone who's watching their child slip away? Sometimes I wish people would just sit with me in silence, rather than trying to find the right words. There are no right words for this. Looking ahead, I feel like I'm holding my breath, waiting for the next wave to crash over us. The next hospital visit, the next side effect, the next difficult conversation. I've started writing everything down, his favorite phrases, his silly jokes, even the things that annoy him. I don't want to forget any part of him, not now, not ever. Thank you to everyone who reached out and to those who are simply reading along and keeping us in your thoughts. I'll update again when I can, but for now, I'm just focusing on getting through one day at a time. If you're still here reading this, thank you for walking with us through this unimaginable journey. For now, we keep going. One day, one moment, one breath at a time.
Twist 3 DS 0 Yule. Firstly, I'm so sorry to read this, and my heart goes out to you and your family.
As someone who has lost twins, I can say it was absolutely the most difficult period in my life. There are support groups that you can lean on, where you can engage with or read from other parents who have unfortunately been through the same experience. Speak to your doctor. There are services such as therapy or medication that can help you cope over the next year. Do not ignore your mental health. SSRIs can and will help you. One-on-one or family counseling will also help. When my twins passed, I was angry for a very, very long time, 10 plus years. I should have started these therapies sooner. I sincerely hope that 3% chance grows and your boy is able to recover fully. Either way, don't neglect your own mental health. Update 2. This week has been brutal. We just finished the second week of radiotherapy, and it feels like every session is chipping away at my son's strength. On Monday, he started complaining that his legs felt funny. By Wednesday, he could barely stand without holding onto something. Now, walking is almost impossible without help. Watching him struggle with something so simple, something he used to do effortlessly, has been soul-crushing. I try to make it easier for him, holding his hand and helping him with every step, but he's still so determined. "I can do it, Mommy," he says, even though his legs are shaking, and his face shows how much effort it takes. He's trying to be brave, and it's incredible, but it's also devastating. No 6-year-old should have to fight this hard just to move. Today was one of those days that will stick with me forever. He spent the morning drawing while I was cleaning up around the house. When he called me over, he proudly held up a picture of our family. He had drawn himself, Me, his dad, and our dog standing under a bright blue sky with a big yellow sun. He handed it to me and said, "This is for when I get better." I smiled and hugged him, telling him how beautiful it was. But inside, I was breaking. Later, after he fell asleep, I sat in the kitchen holding that picture and cried until I couldn't anymore. How do you respond to that kind of hope when you know what's coming? How do you tell your child that getting better might never happen? I keep replaying those words in my head, trying to figure out how to protect his innocence without lying to him. It's an impossible balance. This week, I also got a call from a support group for families dealing with childhood cancer. They invited us to a meeting where parents share their experiences and offer advice. I wanted to say yes right away. It sounded like exactly what I need. But after I hung up, I started second-guessing myself. I'm not sure I can handle it. The thought of sitting in a room with other parents, all of us carrying this unbearable weight, feels overwhelming. At the same time, maybe hearing how others are coping could help. I don't know. I'm still thinking about it, but honestly, I'm terrified. At home, everything feels heavier lately. My husband has been throwing himself into work, probably to avoid dealing with everything. I get it. It's his way of coping. But it leaves me feeling even more alone. Our dog, who used to bounce around the house and follow my son everywhere, now just lies next to him quietly, almost like he knows something is wrong. The house feels different, quieter. It's hard to explain, but it's like the air is thicker, like even the walls know what's happening. The doctors warned us that things would get harder, but hearing it and living it are two very different things. They've explained what to expect, more physical challenges, more pain, more questions from him that I won't know how to answer, but no amount of preparation can make this easier. Every day feels like I'm bracing for the next blow. Still, we're trying to hold on to the little moments of joy. We've been spending a lot of time just being together, doing the things that make him happy. He still laughs at his favorite cartoons, still loves it when we build pillow forts in the living room. He started singing again, though his voice is softer now. It's these moments that keep me going, even when everything else feels impossible. I don't know what the future holds, and honestly, I'm scared to think about it too much. Right now, I'm just trying to get through each day without falling apart. There's so much I can't control, but I can make sure he feels loved and supported every second of the time we have left. That's all I can do. I'll update again when I can, but for now, we're just surviving day by day. If you're still reading, thank you. It helps more than you know to know we're not completely alone in this. Maztabets. I'm so sorry. I can't even begin to imagine what you and family are going through. I don't know what I can offer in way of advice, other than make his remaining time as fun and memorable as you can. Trips, adventures, movie nights. At the end of the day, all that matters in the world is love. And if you can fill his heart and yours to the brim with it before he moves to whatever lies next, you'll carry that and those memories with you forever. And I'm sorry you have to experience this. Sending out whatever good vibes and prayers I can from my end. Update 3. It has been a month since my first post, and everything has changed so much. My son has almost completely lost the ability to walk. We finally got a wheelchair for him, and while it has made things easier in some ways, seeing him in it feels like a punch to the gut every time. It is not just a tool, it is a constant reminder of how much his little body has been taken from him in such a short time. He tries to adjust, but I can see the frustration in his eyes. He used to run around the house, jumping on the furniture even when I told him not to. Now he struggles to push himself in the chair, his arms shaking from the effort. Sometimes he asks me why he cannot play like before. "Why can't I run, Mommy?" he said yesterday, his voice so quiet it was almost a whisper. I sat with him holding his hand and told him the truth as simply as I could. "Your body is tired right now, sweetheart, but we are doing everything we can to help it feel better." He nodded, but I could tell he was not satisfied with my answer. How could he be? He is too young to understand what is happening, and I am too broken to explain it properly. This week, I finally decided to attend the support group I mentioned in my last update. Walking into that room was one of the hardest things I have ever done. I sat there with my hands clenched so tightly in my lap that my knuckles turned white, wondering if I was making a mistake. But as the other parents started sharing their stories, I felt something shift inside me. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who truly understood. Their children had faced the same diagnosis, the same treatments, the same heartbreaking realities. They talked about the things they had learned, the mistakes they had made, and the ways they had found small joys in the darkest moments. One mother approached me after the meeting. Her son passed away 2 years ago, and she said she could see the fear in my eyes because she remembered feeling the exact same way. She handed me a book about creating meaningful memories with your child when time is limited. "This saved me," she said. "Maybe it can help you too." That night, after my son fell asleep, I stayed up reading it cover to cover. It was filled with ideas, big things like planning a special family day, but also small, everyday ways to make moments count. I cried so much while reading it, but it also gave me a sense of purpose, like I could still do something to make this time special for him. Inspired by the book, I started a list with him. I called it Fun Things to Do Together, and I let him come up with whatever ideas he wanted. He added things like watching his favorite movie for the 100th time, eating ice cream for breakfast, and going to the park to look at the ducks. Some of the things on the list are simple, and others will be harder to pull off with his condition, but I am determined to do as many of them as we can. The smile on his face when he adds something new to the list makes it all worth it. At the same time, reality keeps creeping in. The doctors told us that the tumor is progressing faster than they had hoped, and the radiotherapy has not slowed it down as much as they wanted. They are already talking about adjusting his treatment plan, but I can tell they are running out of options. Hearing them say it out loud is like a blow to the chest, even though I have known this was coming. I hate how clinical their words sound sometimes, as if they are talking about a case instead of my little boy. But I know they are trying their best. At home, things are different. My husband and I are trying to stay strong for our son, but it feels like we are barely holding it together most days. He still buries himself in work, while I throw everything I have into caring for our boy. We barely talk about what is happening, as if saying it out loud will make it more real. When we do talk, it usually ends with one of us breaking down. The weight of this is too much for either of us to carry alone, but we are both too scared to share it fully. The hardest part of all of this is the moments when I let my mind wander to the future, when I imagine what life will be like without him. I try not to, but sometimes it sneaks up on me and it is paralyzing. How do you go on when the thing you love most in the world is gone? I do not know the answer, and I do not think I ever will. For now, I am focusing on the time we have left, on the moments that still bring him joy, on the little things that make him laugh, on holding his hand and telling him I love him as often as I can. That is all I can do. I will keep updating when I can. Thank you for listening. It means more than I can say. Reasonable Visit 776. Video your son as much as possible. Do the things. Ask the questions. Love him. Kiss him. Give him everything you can while he's still here. I lost my almost 4-year-old completely unexpectedly, and of course often think of what I would have done different had I known it would be his last days. That would be it. More of what I already did. Love him, just harder. I'm so sorry. Life is really fucking unfair. I'm not religious, but know that there's no way there's a hell worse than this. Sending you all the positive thoughts and healing. Update 4. I cannot believe that just 6 weeks ago, my little boy was still running, laughing, and playing. It feels like a lifetime has passed since then. Now, most of his time is spent in bed. His body is so much weaker, and his voice has become soft, almost a whisper. But even now, he still asks about the days ahead and listens intently when I tell him bedtime stories. His favorite is one about a brave knight who always finds a way to win, no matter how impossible the odds seem. This week, I decided we needed to do something special. He has always loved the park near our house, especially watching the birds swoop and flutter between the trees. So, despite how difficult it has become to move him around, I made it happen. We packed his favorite blanket, some snacks, and headed to the park. He cannot walk anymore, so I wheeled him to the spot he loves, a little hill overlooking the pond. His face lit up as soon as he saw the birds. "They look so happy, Mommy," he said, smiling for the first time in days. It was the kind of smile that stays with you forever. We stayed there for hours, watching the world go by, soaking in the sunlight. It was a simple day, but it felt like a gift. At night, when the house is quiet, I replay moments like that in my mind. I know time is running out. I see it in the way he sleeps more now, in the way his laughter has grown faint, in the way his little hand feels so fragile in mine. The doctors have stopped talking about new treatments. They are focusing on keeping him comfortable, which is all we can do now. I find myself measuring time differently these days. It is no longer about days or weeks. It is about moments. The moment he tells me he loves me, the moment he asks for his favorite song to play before bed, the moment he smiles at a silly joke. Each one feels like a treasure I am trying to lock away in my heart before they slip through my fingers. The hardest part is pretending to be strong for him. He looks at me with those big, trusting eyes, and I know he is counting on me to hold it together. Sometimes I sneak away to cry in the bathroom, clutching a towel to my face so he does not hear me. But when I am with him, I smile. I laugh. I tell him how brave he is, how proud I am of him, how much I love him. People often ask how I am doing, and I never know how to answer. How do you explain what it feels like to watch your child slip away a little more each day? How do you put into words the mix of heartbreak, exhaustion, and fear that has become your new normal? I do not think there are words for this. Even so, I am not giving up. I refuse to let this time be defined by sadness. Every day, I look for ways to create joy for him. Yesterday, we built a fort in the living room and watched his favorite movie inside. He laughed at all the same parts he always does, and for a little while, it felt like nothing had changed. I know the days ahead will be even harder, but I will keep showing up for him, no matter what. He is the light of my life, the reason I get up every morning, and I will do everything I can to keep that light shining for as long as possible. To everyone who has been following our story, thank you. Your kindness and encouragement have meant more to me than I can express. I do not know what the future holds, but for now, I am holding on to these moments with everything I have.